Grounded. 5 months into this latest conflict, the cost is mounting. We are looking at more than 1,700 civilian deaths, over 400 injured U.S. service members, and a military expenditure that currently stands at $37.5 billion. This satellite image shows the Bab al-Mandab Strait, a narrow bottleneck connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. A significant portion of the crude oil used by global markets passes through this specific corridor every day. That corridor is now under threat from Yemen's Houthi rebels. Backed by Iran, the militia recently announced they are closing the strait to vessels linked to U.S. allies like Saudi Arabia. If the closure holds, ships are forced to reroute thousands of miles around the southern tip of Africa. The resulting delays and increased fuel costs would likely send global oil prices to new heights, impacting fuel and transport costs in every major economy. This localized conflict now ripples through the global trade network, where the stability of the world's energy supply depends on a single, vulnerable passage. To understand the deadlock, you have to look at the philosophy driving the American response. Under the Trump administration, the strategy is defined by maximum pressure. The logic is that if an opponent refuses to yield, the only answer is to hit them harder until they do. But the Iranian leadership, represented by figures like Ali Khamenei, views this through a different lens. In Tehran, any attempt to compromise while under attack is seen as a sign of weakness that only invites more strikes. Both sides are now operating on a return to war, each believing they have the greater leverage to withstand the cost. The result is a cycle where escalation is pursued for its own sake, with no clear path to de-escalate. When two powers operate on completely different assessments of leverage, the result is a strategic deadlock where neither side can find an exit that allows them to claim victory. This is the logic of globalized guerrilla warfare. In a conventional fight, the United States must achieve a definitive military win to avoid the appearance of defeat. For Iran, the goal is much lower. They win simply by surviving and continuing to resist. That capacity for endurance was forged during the 8-year Iran-Iraq War. The regime learned early on how to absorb catastrophic pain and sustain a conflict over a decade, a mindset that persists in the current leadership. Knowing they cannot win a head-on military clash with a superpower, Iran's strategy focuses on exploiting the economic vulnerabilities of American allies across the region. When the United States destroyed a desalination facility on the Iranian coast, cutting off water to 10,000 people, Iran's proxies responded by striking a similar plant in Kuwait. Kuwait relies on these facilities for 90% of its drinking water. A superpower can deploy a massive military budget, but those resources cannot secure every civilian asset against an adversary that has already accepted the risk of its own destruction. The strategy of maximum sanctions has not halted the nuclear program, and military strikes have not deterred the closure of maritime trade routes. These levers have been pulled for years, yet the situation on the ground has only grown more volatile. In Tehran, the leadership looks at the fate of Saddam Hussein, who gave up his weapons and was toppled, and contrasts it with Kim Jong-un, who kept them and survived. As long as the primary U.S. response is military force, it provides the Iranian leadership with a logical justification for developing a nuclear weapon as their only real insurance policy. Before the current crisis, a working deal already existed. In 2015, the JCPOA successfully halted the Iranian nuclear program in exchange for verified sanctions relief. However, the United States unilaterally abandoned that agreement. By reimposing sanctions while Iran was still in compliance, Washington demonstrated that an American commitment can vanish with a single presidential signature. This makes the job of future negotiators nearly impossible. When the previous bridge was burned so publicly, how do you convince an adversary to give up their centrifuges when they know the next administration might simply tear up the deal again? The United States is caught in a conflict it cannot win through force, having already dismantled the diplomatic tools required to end it.